Hello, everyone. It is August 31st, 2021. There's the proof of it. Well, I hope you don't live in South Lake Tahoe. And I hope you're not in New Orleans. But I'm not going to talk about that tonight. Or New York City subway. Or the canine military dog. I raised Shiloh just like a military service dog, and nobody liked him. I wonder why. Nobody could live with him. It's my mom's birthday, August 31st. And she's in heaven waiting for me. If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't be here. And I guess some people wish I wasn't, but I am. Foredestined and foreknown. I thought I'd just sit here and see if I can remember stories about my mom. And no, I'm not going to tell you that I was born at a very young age with no clothes, no money, no name, and somebody decided to put a blue hat on my head instead of a pink hat. Now I guess they use those rainbow color hats. I don't know. I remember probably the very first time, so I had to be about 3 or 4 when the brain starts coming out of the terrible twos, which begin at 2 and end at 4 or 5. And I can't remember which story came first, but I think the one about Aunt Abby. We were in front of the Medical Research Center in Kansas City, Missouri, and my mom had just gone there to help support her. Because she's passed, she was a radio x-ray technician back in the, these dates. But anyway, the story is this. I asked her why she had stitches on her left hand and she was missing her fingers. What do I know about the bad guys? Well, I guess her dad, in a fit of rage, she played the violin so well, he chopped her fingers off. And because, don't quit the story, I got more positive things coming. And because she was still growing, so she must have still been about my mom's age. And so periodically they had to, because the bones that were left were still growing, she periodically had to have the skin grafted or whatever. Then the next story I remember at the same location. I must have been a little bit older then. Because my mom was talking to a group of men. And the bus went by. We used to use public transport then. That's why when I went to Madrid, Spain, I knew how to ride the bus system. because I had learned it as a child. And I started waving at the bus driver because he was just keeping on trucking because there's nobody at the stop sign. And I sped toward the stop sign, waving my hands, shouting as loud as I could. She said, "Don't leave me behind. I never left you behind." And that bus driver stopped, backed up, and those men fled. And we got on the bus and we got home. Oh, now I'm going deeper back into my memory. My dad built houses. And I think I've told this story before. We lived across the street from elementary school. And I was like 4 years old. No, actually I was 3. Because I don't turn 4 until after school already started, so that's why I got short man syndrome. Not only are you starting school a year earlier, you're dealing with guys that have flunked out for 2 years. So you know they're, well, you know what I'm saying. And I must have been really young at the time. My dad was back from Korea. And one night, he called me in. He was having some sort of episode. I think he just fallen off. He was working for the union. I think he'd just fallen off some scaffolding. They just stole all of his tools. He laid on his back with a broken back for a year. So my mom had to work. And she did pretty good. She was never a waitress, she was a hostess. But the point of this part of the story is he gave me all of his Marine medals. So I put them under my pillow. Because you never know when the tooth fairy's going to come. And the next morning, they don't remember it. I don't know what you're talking about. Do parents lie to children for their own good? Nah, I don't think so. So that was that. And I remember the house that we built. It had to be after the car wreck when I was tossed out the window. And her hip was busted and I was laying in the grass. And they wouldn't even have noticed me if I hadn't been crying. I guess I'd wet or pooped my pants, I don't know. Never been much afraid of flying or dying. Whoop! Sorry, son. Well, the water was bad. The drainage was bad. So our basement caved in. My dad and my uncle were in Jacksonville, Florida. Just like that strip mall in Raytown, they had great ideas. They just couldn't put the finances together. So needless to say, we walked across that sidewalk, which did not have any rebar, and you got to imagine it's washed away just like that bridge in Mississippi where 2 people were killed and 9 cars just in the middle of the night. You're not supposed to be driving and they just... So how about a happy memory? Fast forward 17 years. I'm deciding whether to go to college or Vietnam. And we lived over there from St. Washington High School. St. War- George Washington Elementary School. It's over by the cemetery where I have people buried all over the world. I don't even know where I'm going to get buried. Maybe in a poof. Thank you, China. It was the girl next door. And remember, I have Hollywood connections. So anyway, we all know girls mature faster than guys. And since I may be 2 years younger than my birth certificate, I might only be 67. So Abby and my mom decided we'd go back to the old place that was still open where I was discovered when I ran around the building and got hit here and got a scar there, and nobody knew who I was, but somebody on the teacher staff remembered. I'm that little kid that comes in and waits for his mom and always has an Eskimo pie. I guess she had a running account because she couldn't get home in time. Well, anyway, I think her name was Deborah. Well, she met me straight up. Tattoos. This happened to me more than once. So you bikers out there, I don't like you. She felt like she'd been set up. And so I didn't know what to say to her. What do you say to somebody you haven't seen in a lot of years? I guess you talk about, do you remember? And she looked at Abby and my mom and she said, I'm not taking this. And went outside and got on a motorcycle and disappeared. I bet she did. But anyway. So Eskimo pies, I like ice cream, but I don't consume it anymore. Do you know I was diagnosed with diabetes 40 years ago? I used to drink 3 2-liter bottles of Pepsi every day. Potato chips, hamburgers, and french fries. I was a very successful salesman. And I could sell anybody anything. And years later I met the vegetarians and they about starved me to death. Well, what's another good story I can tell about my mom? Years later. Oh, let's stay in the beginning years. She actually told me this. Most of you don't know this. In 1950 or 1951, North Kansas City or Kansas City, Kansas flooded. And she was working somewhere there. And she was pregnant. And she was like on the 3rd floor. And the roof had caved in. And there was nowhere else to go. And somebody in a boat came by and said, "Ma'am, do you need some help?" "Yes, I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do." He helped her in the boat. He took her to a rescue center, and she never saw him again. An angel? A good Samaritan? You decide. The story will continue.